Good evening. Thank you for coming. Folks that don't know who I am, I'm Len Howard. I'm the fire chief here in Brattleboro. And for the folks in the room, if you want to speak, please come up to the podium so the folks can hear you with a microphone there. And the people that are on Zoom, please raise your hand and we'll call on you as your hands go up. Again, thank you for coming, and I'm now going to turn the program over to Rich Buchanan, who is from AP Triton, who was hired to do this study, and Tom Schneider, who's here with AP Triton as well, is sitting over next to me. All yours, Rich.
Good evening, everybody. For the folks, I had the pleasure of meeting some of you. You look familiar to me from last night's meeting. My name is Rich Buchanan. As he said, my partner and I are from AP Triton, and we were hired to come in and do an evaluation of the provision of EMS in the town of Brattleboro. And what that basically means in a nutshell is to try to figure out what model best serves the community. And there's only a couple of these slides that I want to repeat from last night, just to make sure if somebody didn't participate last night that I'm being, clear on what we're doing. But 90% of what I would like this evening is anybody that would like to jump in and ask questions, I'd like to answer them and give you an idea of what's going on.
Are you hoping to go straight to the?
May I please? Yeah, if you don't mind, then just so I can get the background, maybe that answers a bunch of the questions, and then we'll open it up to the public. Does that slide look familiar, ma'am? Perfect. We're in good shape then. This is one of my favorite hobbies. I climb mountains in the middle of the winter. It's very exciting. So it's supposed to be one of those pictures makes you feel good as we start the presentation. We're doing what is known as an EMS feasibility study. Oh, we have people. I'm going to actually wait a minute.
It's not easy to get in.
I understand. I've been lost since I got here.
Oh, okay.
So it works well. The only one that's better than this is your town hall. I got lost in your town hall as well. So I understand. As I was saying, the purpose of our visit is what's called an EMS feasibility study. And what that basically means is we're going to look at what we've now discovered is 4 possible models for how you can have the provision or you can be provided the services of emergency medical services. The first one that we're going to is it on?
Does it not?
Yeah, it suddenly, one moment, folks, it just a minute ago was working just wonderful.
I wonder if
There we go.
There you go.
The first one is, and like I said, all of these models are very functional. They're very practical. They can easily be utilized in this community. The purpose now is to educate you on each one of them. And then your governing body will make a decision as to what is the best services for the people within the town. The first one we're going to look at is reinstating the subsidy and the contractual agreement with Rescue Inc. They've been providing service here for a very long time. Everything that we have seen thus far, they provide good care, and I think it's a viable solution. It's just now comes down to some of the criteria I'm going to show you in just a moment. The second one is we will look for the possibility of a contractual agreement with a private ambulance, somebody completely outside that comes in. There will be a for-profit organization, and they'll provide services and as a private business. And this is very common throughout the country as well. There are pros and cons to that one. The third one is we'll look and see what the practicality of providing EMS through your existing fire department, the Brattleboro Fire Department, and it becomes what is known as a fire-based EMS system. So the paramedics would come out of here, and so would ambulance transport. The fourth one is a public-private partnership. We call them a hybrid system. These are very good systems where a private entity connects with a public entity and they provide services together. And that's what you have going on right now. You have an organization that has come in from the outside called Golden Cross, private ambulance, and they pair up with a firefighter here. They house in the firehouse or the 2 fire stations, and they provide service in that model. All 4 of these have the potential of providing service to you into the future. The question is, which one is probably the best fit for the community? From that, we're going to look at 4 things, and we'll be able to explain some of those tonight. but some of this has just not been resolved yet. We're still completing the process. We haven't made a lot of the conclusions because we're still gathering information. The first one we're going to do is to measure each one of those models and determine their service levels. What is the highest level of care that they can provide you, and then ultimately get you to definitive care or a hospital. So we'll look at your service delivery, and we're looking for the quality of care. The next thing we'll look and see is the performance of each one of these organizations. There's a lot of depth to this and a lot of debate. The one that is often used and understood is you dial 911 and you want somebody to show up your door as quickly as possible. So time is one of those performance. I will tell you it's important, but it's important on different levels, and we have to get that into some detail a little bit later. But we'll look at all the performance of the organization, each one of those models, and we'll be able to assess that one and say this one is maybe a better fit than another. The third one we're going to hold them to is fiscal responsibility. These folks, this is your money. As you know, it's a public funded program. And so consequently, we want to make sure that there's fiscal responsibility, and we'll measure each one of those options against this to see which one is fiscally responsible as it applies to public funding. And finally, sustainability. What you don't want to do is go through this process over and over and over again. You want to find an organization that is going to be here, it's going to last, it has the financial stability, the ability to staff, all the components that go into this. You want to find one that'll be here into the future. And so we'll measure each one of those models and base it on their sustainability. And of course, under each one of these, there's a lot of subgroups that'll go into the analysis. So we're going to look at those 4 models. We'll measure those 4 models on these criteria. We are going to lay them side by side in a report. There will be some background in the beginning where we did an analysis, some statistics, a lot of statistics actually. We'll do a lot of financial analysis, but in the end, we'll put these 4 in the back, and they won't be in any order as far as priority. And then we basically hand it over to your public officials so they can make an informed decision. That is the ultimate goal here, is to make a decision with far less emotion and a whole lot of fact. And that's not only financial, but statistical. And then your governing body will make the decision as to how they want to move from this moment on. This started in June, which means, including my partner and I, we've been on this project for a long time. There has been a great deal of research and work that has gone into this. I have interviewed so many people that I think I'm going to need a new cell phone when it's done. And we have more to go. There's a lot on our list that we've got to keep talking to before we've actually completed it. But this didn't just start. It's been going since the middle of June that we were actually selected to do this project, and we started. Obviously, we're here today. That would count for the October 19th. The completion of this project, it is our expectation and our desire to be able to give you what's known as a technical review to the governing body in about 30 days. That is our goal, and I think and we're pretty good about being on task and on time. Let's talk about a technical review, because it is critical. There are many entities involved in this. I have an organization called Rescue Inc. They are represented. We met with them today. Nice folks, and we asked for a great deal of information from those folks. Matter of fact, a lot of information. We also met with Golden Cross, another organization that we need a lot of financial response capacity, all the ability for them to provide service. And we asked for a lot of their information. We have most of Brattleboro Fire Department's information already. So we have that third of it already ready to go. And we'll also start looking a little bit at some of the alternate private ambulance companies as we do this. Assuming that we gather all that information in a timely manner. And what I do with each one of those organizations is they give me their information, we do the analysis, and one of the things that AP Triton is very good about is we give it back to them. Each organization, from Golden Cross to Rescue Inc. and the Brattleboro Fire Department, will turn around and say, yes, what you are writing is correct. Now, it should be correct. They gave it to us. So we're simply, putting it into an organized fashion. But on occasion, as it turns out, we make mistakes. We will fix those mistakes. After we fix those mistakes, then we will write up the 4 options and do the pros and cons for each one. There's no reason for us to write a report when we are starting out with incorrect data. So each one of the organizations will be given an opportunity to tell us that information is accurate, and we will make accommodations accordingly. If all that happens in a timely manner, then I hope to get the draft copy to the town on or about 30 days from now. When they look at it and take one more look to make sure that their finances are correct in there and what they provided us, we clean it up a little bit more and it is completed. The report is what it is. There won't be a conclusion in there. I'm not even going to do an executive summary in that report. We're going to present 4 options. We'll give the pros and cons and let you folks communicate to your elected officials, and then they will make a decision what to do. We will simply, give you the pros and cons of each option. Then I have the honor of coming back here somewhere on or about the middle of December, which I am truly looking forward to. I bet it's beautiful here. I'm even going to stay a couple of extra days just so I can, because I didn't get that chance now, and I will present the 4 options to you. And I will explain why this one is a pro or a con, or, some of the details that are within that report, answer the questions that are posed, and then you folks will make your decision. So that's the process of what we're doing here. That will be the cover. And like I said, we should have this on or before about the middle of December, if everything goes well. And then we'll move on from there. There's the team doing it. My good friend Tom is in the room right here. The reason I show that is one of the benefits of doing something like this is we come from all over the country. Tom's from Washington State, I'm from Colorado, and they come from everywhere. So the perspective that we're going to bring you is based on what goes on across the country with systems exactly like yours. I come from a system very much like yours. We particularly picked this team because these people came from systems like yours. Now, by the time I was done, I ended up in a very large metropolitan department, but I am very familiar with the environment that you have, as is Tom and the rest of these individuals. So the opinion is going to be very broad, and we simply can tell you what the rest of the country is doing. And hopefully some of the mistakes that they make, you don't have to repeat, and you can take advantage of some of the things they learned. And that's what we hope to do from each one of these people. There's no real purpose to a couple of these slides. It just shows you a few of the things we work on. We do a lot. Most of what we do is considered evidence-based. I'm not allowed to put anything in this report that I can't find some statistical or factual support to put it in there. So my opinion will not exist. Tom and I don't have an opinion. Well, we do, but we don't get to put it in the report. So what we basically do is we use a lot of statistics. This simply shows, I know when the call volume occurs for EMS during the week, which by the way is very even. Many communities have those peaks and rises depending on tourism on the weekend, like the ski areas that I deal with and that kind of stuff. You folks, you just basically stay busy consistently across the week. You take a little bit of a break on Sunday. This is very predictable. Obviously, they get busier in the middle of the day, but surprisingly, they go from basically not doing much at 6, they get busy, they stay that way until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's a busy system. I've been watching them for 2 days, and these folks are working hard. They're certainly not lounging around. I'm surprised that they can accomplish as much as they do in the time that they have. But this also translates to, how many units, and we're speaking specifically to ambulances, how many do you need in the middle of the day to make sure that this nice person right here doesn't have to wait for that ambulance if they have 1 or 2 or 3 calls pending. We call that concurrency. These are the kind of pieces of information that we will provide you so that you can make a very informed decision. I know the kind of tragedies you have in your lives as far as medical emergencies. Obviously, medical, and that covers quite a number of things, but there's a whole lot of people here that have troubles breathing, a lot of chest pain and cardiac events, and then it of course goes up from there. This slide has a little too much detail in it, but it basically, because this translates, because unfortunately, folks, we have to talk about money. At some point, if you want to provide service at your hospital, you want to provide service from your paramedics, we have to pay for this program. This helps define some of the monies that will be generated when we deal with insurance companies. And we can talk about that more if you have some questions. So we now know the kind, we know when the events are occurring. Then we add the computer wanting to talk. Maybe you give it a click. I don't know.
But I can,
Something about the admit and then suddenly I can't do anything.
really? I've been admitting people.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You had that pop up, is it still on the background someplace? That little admit all pop up?
Or advance the slide for me.
Marlon, can you get the top, the arrow button?
I'm sorry, what?
There's an arrow button, Mr. Mullen, I believe, down by your space bar. That'll go 4 directions.
Tom, what do you say?
I'll try.
Okay, what do you?
Okay, well,
When I hit escape. to go out of-
Yeah, when I jump out of this.
one moment, folks. We'll try to make the technology work a little bit. You certainly don't want to see that on the screen.
That has.
Okay, now we're back to it. We'll do a bunch of GIS. These are people with remarkable computer programs that map all of the events that are in your community, help determine where you should put ambulances, fire stations, law enforcement. It helps you kind of gauge where some of that occurs. This shows you the proximity to your current fire stations, red being the highest volume. And of course, as you get further out, it gets a little bit greener.
Bear with me.
I'm doing just fine. And then you have to hit start the show from current slide. Perfect. This is an interesting slide. We also need to know volume. Because volume translates not only to the requirements, how much equipment and how many people we need to provide service, but is it going up or down? Interestingly enough, some of your other emergencies like fires are tending to go up. Your medical requirements are been very steady. Now, unless you have a major change in the number of constituents you have, there's a big population increase and stuff. We think that that'll stay. It'll grow a little bit, but it's been pretty consistent. That one to the 2019, we don't really put much faith in that. That was COVID, and we didn't. It's just an outlier. Then this one, we have this for each one of the entities. What we'll do is look and see their performance for time, along with many other metrics that are utilized to define performance. Time is just one of them. And this particular slide shows the times for the Brattleboro Fire Department when you call 911, how quickly they show up to your door. And walking over here a little bit, if you take all of their calls, that means fire, medical calls, motor vehicle accidents, fire alarms, and other things, they average about somewhere between 6 minutes and 49 seconds to, what is it, 6 minutes and 29, somewhere in there. They're going to be at your doorstep. This means that this department is doing very well. I can also tell you that these other organizations are also responding very quickly. So from the standpoint of strictly time, it's going very well from all the entities that we are able to communicate. That just happens to be the fire departments. This is important. As I said, as much as we don't want to put money in this equation, it has to be here. We still have to pay for the services, public or private. And this is a very accurate, in our experience and based on our experience, prediction of what the call volume and the population will be in the area. So this takes out 5 years. We used to do 10-year projections. After COVID, we knocked that off. We can't, we'll just be happy if we can predict for at least 5 years. So we can generate, we will know how many resources and the expenses that'll be associated with providing that service based on these numbers. So there's a lot of data that's going in. All that is fluffy just to say that we've laid a lot of groundwork to this process up until now. So now we need to tie up some loose ends. So giving a very brief overview of that, I'd like to answer some questions on your part. And folks, I can really answer anything. So feel free to speak your mind, and I'd like to hear what you have to say, sir. And I think, sir, not to make your life difficult, I think they have to have you stand up here so that the people on the Zoom can hear you.
My name is Kit Berry. I've been in Brattleboro since 1965. In the mid 60s, early 70s, Brattleboro, at least by my observations, was flooded with young people. The hippie new culture movement, Brattleboro was very receptive to the hippie new culture movement, plus the fact there are 3 colleges here. And a lot of us stayed. And so now I'm wondering what the factor is, a percentage of that a noticeable amount of the population is aging out. That's one thing. And then the other thing I'm wondering about is where, and I'm guessing the last 10 years, even though it started long before that, but particularly in the last 10 years, the effects of Brattleboro being a drug town in terms of the services and being called on.
Legitimate question. One of the graphics, and I may be able to grab it off the computer, is you are an aging population. Many communities are not. Brattleboro is, which then translates to when people get older, there is usually a higher need for medical resources. Plus you get into the Medicare, Medicaid, and some of the reimbursement issues that are attached to this. So it is affecting you, but that growth rate is not unmanageable. That's what I can tell you, is that will not be the reason you have to pick between one model and another. All 4 models should be able to sustain as that grows, but you are absolutely correct. You're going to see an older population over the next 5 to 10 years, whereas many of them, you have that huge influx coming in. We predict that your population is going to grow. As far as some of the other issues, unless there's a major change, what we base the decisions on right now is 4 years backwards. Now, I can't speak to whether or not you're going to have a sudden increase in homeless or, indigent or drug use or any of those kind of social problems. We can show how these systems were managed over the past 4 years, and we'll use that to try to help you pick a model. I can't tell you what's going to happen to your populations over the next 4 years as far as that goes.
I believe, and I might be wrong, that Brattleboro, tied with Rutland, has the highest death rate for overdose.
Okay,
Just to put a perspective on it.
sure. And it's probably been, if you have that statistic, the gentleman said that Brattleboro had a very high or one of the highest rates for drug overdoses. Did I say that correctly? And that being said, it's probably been that way for a couple of years as it's been growing. So that means that those patterns have translated into the information that we have that can help show you some of these models. So I think you'll be able to account for that with what we give you. Another question, please. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to be crazy like I was last night. My name's Kate O'Connor, and basically I want to just come up and say that what I wanted to say last night, but I got distracted, is that I think this is great. I think that your presentation was great. I think the study is great. There's been some division in town, and I think we needed a neutral, third party to come in. And I was really impressed with your presentation. I'm looking forward to the results. And I do have sort of more of a global question. I know that what the fire department wanted to do originally before the EMS thing came up is to have an overview or a strategic plan for the fire department as a whole. Is there any of this information here that you're providing that could provide not just an EMS plan, but help the fire department, do a more global plan? You know what I mean?
It's a good question. As far as a strategic plan, you start a strategic plan with what's called your current state. You have to kind of have an idea of where you are right now. So when we do strategic plans, we do a lot of the statistical analysis of the type of calls, the volume of calls. We look at their staffing models and how efficient those are. We look at their equipment. All of these things we do first. And then from that, we come up with a list of recommendations. And so from those recommendations, then they would sit down and do a strategic planning session. So the nice thing is there's going to be a lot of that in here. So they probably internally could sit down, take this information, recognize there won't be the recommendations. That's what I'm going to actually try to avoid to maintain some neutrality here. But there's going to be a lot of information that talks about, you ought to look at these kind of things. And but we're going to even look at today, I went through all of their training and their ability, not only what they're currently, their training program, but what if they were trying to do, we're talking specifically the fire department. Then we sat down with Golden Cross and got their training capacity. So those components are in the report, and yes, ma'am, it will translate. It's a rather long report. It'll probably be 130, 140 pages. And yes, I think it would be very useful if, in the future, they decided to do a strategic plan internally. And we would recommend it. It's a good thing. Other questions?
On Zoom?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I think they just celebrate the fact that you're here. So they start here and then your city manager will take it from there. But I'll gladly move to the Zoom.
At this point, excuse me, at this point, there's nobody with their hand raised. But if anyone had a question, they could raise their hand and we would call upon them.
Perfect.
Rich, can you pass that over the mic to make sure they're there?
Oh, I think he does. He has a
He has a
microphone.
mic there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
yes, I do.
You want me back up there?
I think they do so that the rest of the town can hear you.
You should set that.
It's difficult for him.
Or, yes,
Nothing and stuff.
we could put you in this chair and then you can just sit at the table.
You want to not respond?
I wouldn't stand up this long. You didn't have to.
I'm still Kit Berry, and I'm going out on a limb on this. This is a nervous point, but I think one reason Brattleboro has so much trouble with the drugs, I think we're tied with Rutland for the highest death rate, and Brattleboro has, again, I think tied with Rutland, more social services than any other town in the state, and way more social services than surrounding states. And social services translate to free money, food, clothing, and housing with no residency requirement. And people hear about this from other regions and they migrate to Brattleboro to cash in. And this population is mentally, emotionally a troubled group. So that puts Brattleboro in a very odd spot because we end up taking care of people way beyond our own boundaries. And I'd be interested if I'm saying something that's inaccurate, I certainly would want to be corrected.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I want to sit.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to go up there.
Betty, could you get, would you sit there?
Or we
Am I on
could,
camera? I don't know.
or we could repeat the question over
You
the
can
mic.
repeat the question.
Do that.
I'm still more comfortable. Need to be more.
I'll be
clear.
happy to
This is
repeat the
easy for
question.
me. There I am.
You're a star.
Yeah. I'm Betty Fry and I live in the town of Guilford. Right. So you said that your cell phone is burning up, talking to all kinds of different people. And I'm curious about who you have talked to outside the perimeters and the boundaries of Brattleboro. You talk to anybody in other towns about how they feel about this?
Question. We first met on the phone. I've met virtually with the state of Vermont. And what she was asking is whether we have reached out to other communities and other entities outside of Brattleboro to make sure, I assume, getting a full perspective on the current situation. Did I say that correctly? I'm just making sure I'm paraphrasing things right. Phone call wise, most of it has been in person. Outside the entity and then the state of Vermont. I needed to work with them to get some statistical information about the kind of procedures and because they hold the database that all the EMS providers must submit to. And so they provided a great deal of information to me. So I've talked to them outside. Still pending. I have your two medical directors to talk to hopefully next week to make sure. And I think they're kind of in the city, but then or the town, I mean, but not.
Identified medical directors?
Yeah, a medical director, a paramedic like myself, we don't have a license to practice medicine. So when we provide care to you as a paramedic, we're doing it under the direction, supervision, and authority of a doctor. And they signed for us saying, yes, you are qualified and I extend my license to you. So all these folks sitting here work underneath a medical director that is established through the state system for District 13. And that person I still need to talk to. I need to talk to another physician that they have working with them. Dr. Storn, I think am I saying that correctly? So I have a couple of physicians left. And then the rest of it has been really focused on the people in the town. That has been most of my phone calls. I, of course, ruined the chief's, week most of the time calling him too much just to get information from the city. But yeah, most of the rest of it's inside.
So Brattleboro proper.
Let's talk about the citizens. And there was a misconception about that. And I need to clean it up and I'll basically, maybe it's my fault. The way that we deal with the citizens is keep in mind the opinion and some of the desires and those kind of things of what you want out of the system go to your public officials. That's really not what I'm supposed to do. That information is supposed to go to your board. So we don't do a lot of that, but what I did do is we put out what I was hoping to be a very abbreviated survey. The survey was fantastic. It wasn't supposed to be a scientific instrument. It was to help my partner and the other 6 SMEs, the people working on this project, get a feel for what the community thought, how some of their desires, some of their concerns, and it was remarkably successful. Some people wanted more detail in there, but that wasn't its purpose. It doesn't draw any decisions. I just wanted to get to know you a little bit. And surprisingly, I have done really large metropolitan systems and got very few, and you folks cleared 300. I was very impressed of how many people wanted to respond. And where folks didn't think I was giving them enough options, they then wrote long narratives. That is valuable. It doesn't change what we do. We're going to be very financial, statistical, very, we're going to do data sets and metrics, as we call them. But I'm going to take all that information and put it in the report as an appendix for your officials to use, because that's who you want to, they listen to you. You're their constituents. And so I will put that in there so that they can make their decisions. So that's where it should go. But if anybody had any consternation about the survey, it truly was just to help us get to know you a little bit. It was for the 6 of us It was not meant to draw any conclusions or anything like that, and it was very successful. And I have to congratulate the community. The comments, the far majority were very articulate. They were very clear. And without a doubt, most of the comments simply said, provide us the best care possible. And that's your goal. And I agree. And then some people went on and wrote me narrative, but all of that I will put in the report. It is a public document. It'll be yours. And you can see what your neighbors were saying, but that information belongs with your select board. That's where that needs to go, not for us. We just need to be very sterile. So that's what we did with the public thus far.
So you're a statistics man
I am. Yes, ma'am.
and you're a finance guy, and you'll have the charts and it'll be easy to read, and that's why that survey was so black and white.
Yeah, it was just to let
Can't
us.
get to those statistics and those numbers without having, you know, that kind of. Like, so there is no warm and fuzzy getting to know the neighbors and the nuances of how something like this works in a community, especially when they've had another survey 60 years.
Yes,
That was regional.
if I
That
may.
doesn't weigh into what you were hired to do.
Right, and if I may paraphrase so that the people here listened, she's conveyed very clearly that our job, she was questioning how much of the emotional and some of those other factors and the feelings of the community play into this. You hired us to be very dispassionate, very factual. It is my job to give you the information needed to make an informed decision. That doesn't minimize what your opinion, it matters a lot. It just belongs with your select board. That's where that should go. I want to give you tools to make a decision. That's our purpose. So we will try to be, we will be very unbiased. And just give you the 4 options and tell you what the pros and cons of those options are. So you're right. Our job is not to participate in that. That's your select board's job. They listen to you.
So it would be a waste of time to create a specific scenario full of complications and then ask what the outcomes of that could possibly be. All the different circumstances, because again, that's not your job.
I'm not sure I understood that
I'm
question.
just thinking about somebody that owns a shop downtown,
Mhm,
but lives in a town outside of Brattleboro.
mhm.
And they're not informed, they're not paying attention, they're not at this meeting. They're not getting that, because probably they live in that other town, so they're not getting Brattleboro information. So that person, because of 60 years of rescue service, a person falls in their store, right? And they call rescue, because that's what they're used to.
Mhm.
So rescue comes or not comes? Rescue can do Brattleboro or not?
And I'm not sure I understand your question completely, other than the informed part. I certainly can get that one. You're asking about some of these people that don't live here. Are they well informed as to the current process of what's going on if they don't actually live in the community? They might be a business owners. That sounds fair.
It's a lot of that.
Yes, my job will be, and then I'll turn it over to the chief. My job will be to present this document, which is a public document. You folks can disseminate that to as many people as I hope will read it. And at least they can have that information, but your select board will eventually decide who shows up to that door at that business. Chief, did you have a comment?
As far as your question, if you call 911 from Brattleboro. When you call 911, it goes to a PSAP, 911 PSAP, and that PSAP transfers that call to our dispatch center. So they know the calls in Brattleboro, so they're gonna dispatch, currently, they're gonna dispatch the fire department and go across to that call. They're not gonna dispatch rescue, they know who is supposed to go to that call. If you call from your house in Guilford, that PSAP will call the dispatch center in Keene, and tell them phone rescue to go to Guilford. So that's how that.
I guess it's down to what people do from habit, and if they have that rescue number, say that they call and they get that dispatch. Is rescue going to turn it over to you automatically? because they won't be coming, because they aren't gonna be doing the work at Brattleboro?
Call 911, you're calling again.
I'm saying, Lynn, not everybody's gonna be, we're looking at how all the different things that people do, out of habit or this or that. Not everybody calls 911 to get help.
If they call,
I just can't possibly.
if they call the rescue quarters and say, I'm Lenny Howard and I'm on Main Street, Brattleboro, rescue should call our dispatch and say, we just received a call from somebody for a medical call in Brattleboro. And our dispatch will dispatch us to that call.
It does sound like it should go that way, but we have the guarantee that it will go that way. Did you have that relationship with rescue? With Brattleboro?
We have to.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we do.
Other questions I can answer? Folks, you also can ask away. You're the foundation of some of
Rich.
this.
We do have somebody on Zoom with a question.
Perfect.
Excellent. This is, I'm gonna ask her to raise her hand. This is Marta Gossage.
Hi, Marta Gossage, District 9. I have a question about how you're going to determine if you're going to get into financial reimbursement with insurance stuff. Because one of the things I seem to remember from previous open meetings was that the town was not able to ascertain the historic percent of insurance and post-insurance reimbursement, payment coming, because I guess rescue didn't separate out their calls by municipality. So they were unable to actually give detailed financials about the Brattleboro, just what they were able to recoup for the cost historically. Is that something that you're going to be able to get a hold of and tell us about, so that we can anticipate, so that we can see our historic, billings and collections?
Thank you. I hope so, is the answer to that question. We met with both I can't speak tonight, both agencies this morning. I submitted a list of things looking for their historical events as it relates to their billables, their payer mixes, what they received, the cost of what it was for them to provide service. One of the things that is the cornerstone of this study is a subsidy. In this country, when people need help, it doesn't matter if you have money or not. Public service should come help you, whether it is a law enforcement, a medical need, or your house is on fire. It shouldn't be based on whether or not you have money. All right. And I believe that's the way it should be. So there is going to be a cost of providing service. There is going to be a certain amount of money that can be collected from insurance and other means. And on occasion, there is a gap between those two where they don't line up. It costs more than you actually receive. And then a municipality is usually burdened with, and it's the right kind of burden, to provide a subsidy so that they can break even and be able to provide the service. That is what we need to know from each organization. We need to know exactly what it costs to provide service, what their receivables are, and then the subsidy should be very specific to that gap. Sometimes it's higher one year, sometimes it is lower, because it depends on your demographics. It depends on your payer mix. And the gentleman in the back was talking, if you have a large indigent or homeless population, they obviously will be uninsured. So we want to find that gap. In the past, I don't think that was well defined. We're going to try to define that. I now have Golden Cross's information. I know the gap for them, and I know what they asked for a subsidy. After meeting with the folks from Rescue Inc., We requested it today. They were very amiable, and I am truly hopeful that they will give us that information. In the absence of that information, we will have to use state sources and what I believe will not be as accurate, but we'll do the best we can with the information we can get that is public records. So I'm hoping that we're provided with everything. I now have 2/3 of that pie in answer to your question. And I hope by the end of next week, I have the remaining part. And then you folks can have a very informed decision about this is the subsidy that should be paid by this community to make sure that, and they need to, they got to stay in business. What should that dollar amount be? And we will help them determine that this is a fair dollar amount. Or we help the town negotiate with another organization to say, this is what we will offer you to provide our people's services. Ma'am, did that answer your question?
Most of the way. Just to add a little clarification. So my question was if your report is going to cover historic. So I saw like in some of those slides there that you have, they go back to like 2018. And my understanding is that some of the controversy about cost and subsidy has to do with some changes to reimbursement rates that were made in 2018, like federally, I think. And so like being able to, and I believe, again, you know, that a lot of these conversations and the just the decision-making was around are not having those historic numbers specifically for the town of Brattleboro. So just to dial down really specifically to the detail of my question is that part of what you anticipate being in your report will be the reimbursement rates historically going back to 2018 for the town of Brattleboro? You would consider that as part of the information you will be gathering and hopefully sharing with us?
Absolutely, but it depends
Okay.
on how much is given to us to be analyzed. It depends on how much we receive. For example, Golden Cross can only give us 6 months worth of information because that's as long as they've been here. So
Right, and I know
obviously-
sometimes between insurance and billing and whatnot
yes,
and
there's a
collections,
delay.
it takes over a year to know actually what the previous year's collection was, correct?
What we were hoping for, which I think would be sufficient, is a minimum of 1 year going back to 2021 to now. That would be optimal. At least we can see a 12-month period that should go through their billing cycle. That should provide enough of a window, and it's current. We're now post-COVID, so we can get that one off the plate. And at least that 1 year period should give us an idea of that information. So in answer to your question, yes, it'll be in there if it is provided to us to analyze.
Thank you, because that's what I'm personally, as a citizen, I feel like that's the information that's missing that that I feel like, you know, the town needs to be able to make these decisions.
Absolutely. Another question, please. Yes, ma'am.
So, I guess this is a question for the town of Brattleboro. There's 2 select people here and Patrick. So when will they finally decide and tell the public? Because it is ultimately up to them.
It is. I can
Yeah,
defer
so
to the city
what's that
manager.
Deadline, that final.
You know, I can't speak for the board, but I honestly don't think they know how to answer that question either. This report is obviously anticipated by a lot of people, but none more than, you know, the 5 select board members. And I don't think, you know, we got to see what's in the report. I'm guessing it's going to be discussed for quite a period of time, but I'll let Daniel speak to that.
Thanks. Hi, Betty. Yeah, we don't know. You know, we're going to take as long as we need to take to do it responsibly, you know. So we'll get the report. There'll be a lot to digest. We have a budget season coming up, you know, so we'll take as long as we need to take to do a good job.
So it could be like February 2023.
I wouldn't even put a date on it. We'll take as long as we need to take to do a good job.
Other questions, please? This is good conversation. It's very informative. At least the ones I can answer.
I am.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, the four scenarios that you had,
Hmm.
can you go back to that slide?
Happy to.
I know.
Right there.
Number four,
Mhm.
public is the town of Brattleboro
Yes,
and fire department.
yes.
They're part of it.
Mhm.
So the private department, what is rescue? Is that a private partnership?
Rescue is a non-for-profit, it's not public, but it's a non-for-profit organization, as I understand, and I could be corrected, but that's what I've been told. So they're another, they would fit into somewhere around that private category, but they're a non-for-profit, private. So it would be that, for example, it could be a possibility that you use Rescue Inc. to do a public-private, and they start the same staffing model that is currently in place right now with Golden Cross, where they provide a firefighter. Here could be an individual from Rescue Inc. They put him in the firehouse, and they have a cooperative relationship, and they work together to provide service to you. It's a model that is used often. And so it is certainly a possibility, but yes, I would put Rescue Inc. as a private entity, but it is important that I believe their legal status is non-for-profit.
You still could fit in that category.
They would fit
as
into
well
that
as
private.
The other.
And they also could fit into the category of a private ambulance, just to take over, which is what it was before the changes that occurred sometime in June. So where they provide all the staffing, the ambulances are not in the firehouse. They have their separate quarters, separate staffing, and they provide EMS services to the town of Brattleboro. So they actually could fall under two of those categories, should that be a choice of your board.
So if they could prove, because those numbers are now going to start coming in.
I hope
That
so.
weren't provided before.
I hope so.
They said it was very cooperative today.
Yes, they did. They were very friendly to us.
Those numbers are Brattleboro.
Yes.
So they are, and if in fact it looked like all three were all in the same price range,
Mhm.
then what other criteria is there to not go with rescue being that? I mean,
Then we would put them up to this. We would measure each one of these. I guess it's going to do the freezing thing again. I have no idea. Close it out, jump back in. We know better.
Well, you'd like to think so, but
Then we'll measure each one of those models to this again. So regardless of, we have to look at who can provide the highest level of care. We have to look at who can perform the best. And again, that comes down to you and I from the survey, you folks want that rescue or that emergency to be managed very soon. You don't want to wait any longer than you have to. Then we're going to look at the fiscal responsibility. It is your public funds that we're talking about. And your government, I think, wants to be fiscally responsible with those funds. Then sustainability. Now, obviously, I think Rescue Inc. has shown that they're kind of sustainable. 50 years seems a long time. So I think, well, yeah, it's just a long time. So I think that, but sustainability also has other factors involved in it. But I think all four of them have the potential, and we will measure them against all four of these criteria. Now, let me jump back to those again.
your last call.
We can. Anybody else? I don't want to cut anyone off, but if folks are satisfied and have had their questions answered, then I'll let everybody be and go about your business this evening. Any last chance? Never seen EMS and fire personnel quiet. And I've been doing it for a long time. All right, folks, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for having us here. And we'll get this done as quickly as we can and make a presentation perhaps in December. All right, thank you very much.